and welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about the people and places and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live. These events, often behind the scenes planners, make things better for our whole state. They build our communities. They build an understanding of one person for the other. And in my opinion, no one has done that more than Ray Rickman, who's here with us today. Thank you, Ray, for being with us.
Thank you.
Former state senator, rare book dealer, president of the Rickman Group that raises funds for management training for nonprofits. What don't you do?
Well, I don't know. Yesterday, this is the end of Black History Month, and gave 17 speeches in February. Too much. But this year, we're giving 17 speeches, 2017, 17 speeches on race and racism. And I'm trying to give all of them in the 19 towns and cities that voted for Donald Trump. I am convinced, personally, that most people are good, but do not have an understanding of race. They may not even have an understanding of racism, what it is. Out in Foster, Gloucester, Burrillville, Richmond, all of them, and mainly in public libraries. I'm already set up for 9 of them, so we're on our way.
Well, good for you. Tell me about your past as a child. What was your experience with racism or with the mixed communities?
Well, remember when I was born, I'm in my 60s, I was born in an apartheid society. And again, most of your viewers never think about that in America. Before 1964, 65, this is officially a racist society. 85% of black people cannot vote, cannot serve on a jury, cannot be a police officer, you name it. And black people can't do it. You can't vote, you can't be a sheriff, and you can't be a member of Congress or a state rep. And again, I don't understand what's wrong with Americans. They have no memory. You talk to 60, 70-year-old women who couldn't go to law school, and you would think they could remember that, how limited everything was before the passages of the civil rights laws. So that's the society in which I was born. And my mother, Betty Rickman, was a very unique woman and, community leader extraordinaire, created baseball teams and choirs and block clubs and you name it. And she was a civil rights advocate. So my nickname was Little Mr. Civil Rights because I was the lead plaintiff in 3 federal lawsuits, mainly to integrate the Detroit public school system.
You were the
lead plaintiff.
Lead plaintiff in 3 federal court cases.
Yes. When my feet couldn't touch the floor.
Okay, well tell us about this. Is worth a novel or an opera?
Well, no, I'm working with Bristol Community College, and we're going to create a 90-minute talk and then do a documentary based on the 90-minute talk. And then I'm going to take it to Detroit and other such places. Let me just tell you one story real quick.
Please.
I have 7 or 8, but let me tell you the one.
Okay.
So we moved into an all-white neighborhood. My mother bought a house. Oops, I'm not telling the truth. A Jewish friend of ours bought a house and then gave it to my mother. My mother gave him the money to buy the house because we couldn't buy a house in that neighborhood because blacks couldn't live there.
And this is in Detroit?
This is in Detroit.
And this is in the boom years of Detroit?
Oh, and Detroit is the finest city in America for anybody, black or white, to live in. And so we have this house, and the first day we're there, big old dirty moving truck, policeman comes by every 15 minutes and yells at us, "Hurry up, get in there." And the reason he's doing this is because there are 100 of our neighbors across the street yelling and screaming at us. And not offering to burn the house down or anything, but, what do you have to move here for? And just on and on and on. And the weird, strange thing about this is these are mainly Eastern Europeans from Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia and Yugoslavia. And they've come here after 1946 to escape communism. So these brand new immigrants are yelling racist slurs. Now, at the same time, Catholic priest, Irish, He comes every 30 minutes and cools them down. And without him, there would have been a riot, seriously. I am a 7-year-old kid. Now, let me get to the next part of the story, the important part. This is August. Come September, we go up to the school, 3 blocks from our house on Garland, same street we live on. The school is up the street. We go. Principal sets us on a long bench. I thought it was 30 feet long, but I actually found the picture of it. It's only like 12 feet. But I sit there with my 5-year-old sister and my mother, and after about an hour and a half, the superintendent of Detroit Public Schools comes, and he has on a black tie and a black suit, and he has a black chauffeur. And the chauffeur holds his coat. And he explains to us that starting the next morning, Tuesday morning, we will have our own bus, 52-passenger bus, my sister Ann and I, and we will be transported to a black school 3 miles away. And my mother sits there and doesn't say a thing to him except okay. And
what would you say in those days anyway? You couldn't start a...
Oh, no, you could have. So anyway, the next day we take the bus and she goes to the ACLU, and then the next day she goes to the NAACP. And I get to be the lead plaintiff in the federal lawsuit to stop the Detroit public school system from making black kids ride buses out of their neighborhood. And it turns out there's 7 of us, because in different neighborhoods. Now, it probably would have fell under its own weight at some point, but it was really a segregated city, and it was very hard to get a house. Everybody's in on it. The realtors are in on it. Just think for a second. The public school system is enforcing racism. The whole society is in on this. The policeman, he's yelling and threatening us. Move faster. He's cursing at the moving van because he doesn't want to come out. I don't know if he doesn't want to come out all day or if he knows something bad will happen at night. But I share this because we lie to ourselves as a people, and I hate to use that word, but this is the society in which we all lived, 60, 50 years ago. And then how do you get from there to something good, and how fast do you do it? And then people pretend this stuff never happened, when in fact it's how all of us lived.
And as a child, what was your thinking when you had to become the plaintiff in a federal court case?
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, you
I'm
did?
a learner. No, you had the ACLU, they were fabulous. I had to go to class 3 or 4 times, and they'd tell me legal language and stuff, and tell me what to tell the judge. And then ACLU was kind of fair-minded. So after they tell me what to tell the judge, they say, "You believe in that, don't you?" And I say, "Yeah, yeah." Anyway, my sister couldn't be a plaintiff in the case. She got a crush on the bus driver, and she loved it. She just loved being on that big bus, just the 2 of us. And she sat behind the bus driver and talked to him, for 12 minutes every morning. And I sat all the way in the back and did my homework. And as I said, she loved the Races Act. This is actually brutal. And, I'm laughing about it now. But you really want to walk up the street to school and get to know your neighbors.
Well, and you don't want what do I want to say? It's much worse than a naysaying neighborhood, a threatening neighborhood, and the larger forces, even the police, to be threatening to you, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old boy. I would think you'd have to be very, very tough.
I don't know. I think it's mixed. There's a blessing being a kid sometimes. You're not really quite sure what's going on. Now, later, you really understand it. And see, let's, if you let me, we'll come all the way to the present. So all these black folks, millions of black people, including me, we have these horrible experiences with police officers. Horrible. I have scars on both sides of my head where Mississippi cops beat me half to death. And I have 8 or 9 of these experiences, and they never leave you in a lifetime. Now, I work at it.
Well, it's just like war, right? I mean, it is a kind of war.
Oh, it is. And that's what happens to soldiers who go to Iraq and Iran and Vietnam. They don't part with what happened to them. And so, that's a perfect example for you to give your viewers. This stuff's not easy. And my mother taught us this: see good around every corner until you see the bad. a lot of people of color think there's bad around the corner, so they see it before they even get there.
A lot of people, period, yes.
Yeah, and it's only natural not to see the good or to see the progress. It's a problem. And so again, every time I get up in public, I say to everybody, you should realize the pain that African Americans have had from slavery to the present. And we should be careful about yelling, we're all equal now, and all this stuff, because life doesn't work that way.
It's very simplistic, is what you're saying.
Well, it's not true. I won't name the name today. I'm feeling gracious, and this is a good show. But first time I sat across the table from a woman who was descendant of a slaver and realized she's worth $600 or $700 million. You know, we are our mother's children. We are the children of. And so the African Americans sitting across the table, and they were child of slaves, great-grandchildren. Now, by the way, again, Americans like to see this stuff so far in the background, in the rear view mirror. It isn't true. When I was a kid, my grandmother was the daughter of a slave. So we forget this, how recent history is and the impact it has.
What did your grandmother tell you?
I don't. She paid no attention to it. No.
She moved on.
She never. Well, now you're getting me into complexities.
Okay.
But she was the granddaughter of a slave who was the mistress of a white slave owner. So they had a weirdly not tough life. They had a big house and later ended up with 50 acres. My grandfather, the grandson of the white slave owner, ended up with 50 acres on a hill with a nice house. And so we were probably the wealthiest people in Uniontown, Alabama. And that takes you back to this issue that, you know, there's no such thing as black history. There is black and white history all wrapped up together.
Or American.
Now, you're going to let me talk about Stages of Freedom's great work?
I am, but I think about that little boy, and I think what you're doing today, and I think there's a direct relationship. Somehow the chords are still there from
totally.
That early experience that you now are a conciliator in a way. You're not the one to bash someone on the head the way you were treated.
Wait, publicly I don't bash people on the head. I think there's too much of it. People call people names when they should, when they shouldn't, when they absolutely shouldn't. And normally you call someone a racist or something, the discussion's over. You can't make any progress. So I don't believe in it. Be as nice as long as you can. But that doesn't mean being silent or weak or non-pleasantly combative. For instance, I'm waging this low-level battle with the governor right now. There are 87 judges in Rhode Island, and there are only 2 black judges on the entire bench. 40% of all the people who come in the courtroom are black or brown, and 24% of the population. So by either number, that court is as white as you could imagine, and it makes a difference who you are. You know, people say, oh, you should see my emails. They say the most ridiculous things. Are you a racist for advocating for black and Latino judges? And I say, this state for 400 years had no black and Latino judges at all. It's not until the 1980s that we had a first black judge. And then we have one for 10 years. Then we get up to 5, and we've gone from 5 down to 2. And it is almost criminal, because when you are a criminal or a defendant,
a 6-year-old boy.
Well, you should see someone who looks like you when you go into the courtroom. And you don't have to have a black judge, but you should know there's one in the building. And so this governor, who purports to be a feminist and a progressive Democrat, has 4 vacancies. Now, I've asked her to give all 4 to people of color. And of course, that gets me a little backlash. You can't do that.
Well,
why not?
Why don't we all start writing to her?
And by the way, she may want, and I'm very careful about this, she may want to do the right thing. It's a very complicated matter, the appointment of judges. But the public needs to speak up.
Okay. So tell me what else is going on. Tell me about the Stages of Freedom. This is something else you're working on.
Oh, I do this about 8 hours a day now, and I'm just thrilled with it. We've created this nonprofit almost 3 years ago to promote Black culture for the entire community. And everything we do, we want people who are not Black to show up and to learn, participate, enjoy, get educated. And the reason for that, of course, is the more people know about other cultures, the better they'll treat that other culture. But it's also enriching. You know, I have study years. In 2002, I read only books about India, or Indian British writers, Indian Canadian, Indian American. And you learn about India. I know plenty about India, and I feel good about India because I know so much. And you know, I've had my feminist years. I went 4 years reading only books by women. And because it's so hard to understand and to be a feminist. So I believe in that. And that's what we're doing with Stages of Freedom. Christmas concert, Ella Fitzgerald. We are going to do The Wiz in the fall, the Black Wiz, with lots of actors and lots of kids involved. Next month, March, this time, we're doing Maya Angelou poetry reading on March 26th at the Public Library, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Public is invited.
The Providence Public Library,
Yes, downtown.
March 26th.
Yep, 2 o'clock. And hopefully, 300 people will show up, and people are invited if they wish to read. We still have some few slots. If they go to stagesoffreedom.org, they can sign up to read. And Maya Angelou was the, just incredible human being.
Yes, she was. She had a sense of presence.
Oh, total.
And
total.
yet very, very gracious.
And the poetry is through the ceiling, and still I rise. You may write me down in history with your twisted lies. I know about 30 of her poems, and I can't read because we're only permitting women to read, but we do hope people will come. And it's one of the many offerings. People get a big name tag, they get to meet lots of people, and hopefully things come of it.
Connections get made,
Yes.
and new learnings occur.
Yes, yes. And again, kind of a salute to Maya Angelou for a life of contribution to the nation. Now, all of this, that one's not a fundraiser, but most of our events are, because this year we're going to put 400 inner city children in the swimming pools at 7 YMCAs to learn how to swim.
Now, somebody may ask you why you want to do that, and your reason is very, very concrete.
Back to slavery, Blacks are not permitted to swim. And then later, of course, remember 85% of all Black people live in the South until about 1960. All the pools in the South are segregated, and you cannot swim in a public pool. And then in a place like Providence, you have 11 pools in 1949, and now we have 4 pools. And they're open 4 weeks, and there's no swim instruction. The city of Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, they have no swim instruction. So swimming's become a very middle, upper class thing. You go to the Y and pay your money. But you can't go to the Y unless you know how to swim, and we're going to fix that. Black children drowned 5 times as often as anyone else in America. That is dreadful, dreadful. So we'll raise, Alan Hasenfeld gave us a $50,000 challenge grant. Now that sounds wonderful, but last year we only had to raise $31,000 only, and it was very difficult to do. So now we have to raise $50,000. We'll probably take his $50,000, create an endowment with it, instead of paying for 1,000 kids. We can't even manage 1,000 kids. So every place we go, we're looking for donations. People give us $10. Alan Hasenfeld's giving us $50,000. And again, the donations are normally $25 or whatever. So it's a lot of work to raise $50,000. Let me say this last thing about swimming. we have trouble raising money for swimming because all these middle upper class folks with some money see it as recreational and fun. And, you know, oh, that couldn't be priority. You have to worry about eating and housing, and so they want to help the homeless more. And I tell people, if you've got enough money, you can put $25 in 25 places. So I don't buy that you're doing something someplace else. But my mother-in-law, a few days before she died, went to the Dartmouth swimming pool at Dartmouth and got in and went swimming when she couldn't walk, had given tennis up years earlier, given up everything except swimming. Do you know what swimming is?
Mm-hmm. I do. I swim often.
Yeah. And so it has this uplifting, sometimes spiritualness to it. It is wellness. It is health. Mm-hmm. It is the avoidance of drowning. And in 3/4 of fire departments, you can't be a firefighter unless you know how to swim.
Well, the other thing is it takes, if someone has arthritis
Yes.
or other illnesses,
Yes.
it takes the pressure off the body so that you can move,
Yes.
and you feel better afterwards.
Yeah. So I'm never shy. I need to, we raised about $7,000. I need $43,000. And it would be just fabulous if one of your viewers just write a $1,000 check.
We would certainly ask that they would.
But we'll take a $10 check. And you know, I've never been shy about begging for help, but what we're going to do here is change everything. Because I just told you 80% of black folks don't swim. So in most families, you have an older brother who swims, a mother who swims, and they make sure you do. They either teach you or they take you to learn. And our goal 6 years from today is in the black community, there will be so many swimmers that it will be the same as Barrington.
And they'll start teaching
Oh, yeah.
very young
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
Well, now how does someone send money to this organization?
So Stages of Freedom is 101 Dyer, D-Y-E-R Street, Providence, Rhode Island.
101 Dyer for Stages of Freedom, if you'd like to help.
Providence, 02903.
A lot
Or-
of kids swim.
Yeah, or go to the website, Stages of Freedom.
Okay. And in Stages of Freedom, you're also talking about other artists and other well-known black figures and trying to get people to understand what they've done, but how their life was as they were working.
So every single year we create an exhibit, and the real exhibit now is called Do Lord Remember Me, and this is history of the African American church.
Okay, let me.
And it's really quite neat because it's a 250-year exhibit. It's in 7 huge panels. It will be at Roger Williams University the first week of March. It's been First Baptist Church. It's been a whole bunch of places, and the goal, of course, is to get it out 4 or 5 times a year. This is the understanding of the black church in Rhode Island, which again is related, connected, part of the white church in Rhode Island.
Sure.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, I have to say, when I was a child, 5 black families were bused to our church,
Okay.
and 5 white families were bused to that church, and that was
Okay.
seen as progressive.
It probably was. You know, progress is a very hard thing to measure. And when people are doing nothing, all of a sudden they do a little, it looks like something. That's why I said, I come back to it, and I don't, it's almost, I'm trying to educate, but even beg. I have people who tell me, you know, I'll ask them for some money for swimming, and they'll say, I already gave to the Y, and all but hang up on me. And I tell them, the Y, which I love, we work a lot with them. They've given us discounts. They're just the most agreeable people on the planet. The Y is a middle class, upper class white institution. And you go to Barrington, I think you'll see 1 black woman swimming, you know, every 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. So you're giving to the Y, wonderful. But that isn't helping inner city children. It isn't. So all of us, especially in this, and you know, I'm direct about it, in this Trumpian year, I think all of us need to do more. And more is whatever you can do. And again, you know, people don't like me saying this, but quite often really good people don't do much good. Because if you're good, you just have to tell everybody you're good. And they don't belong to the NAACP. And again, good people used to belong to the NAACP. I mean, there are a whole lot of things that don't cost but $15, $20. And if large numbers of people did it, they turn the world upside down.
That's true, and that's the way to do things now. Take one organization a month and give to it, or give 3 times to one organization that you care very much for. And I certainly hope people will remember Voices of Freedom. You have a new book that you're talking about these days, and I am very interested in this. I have not read it. It's called Dark Work, The Business of Slavery in Rhode Island. And it seems to me that if this history really comes out and people can hold it in their hands, and they can think through it, and they can think about the buildings that were built, Brown University, for example, or the churches, or the civic halls that were built all over the state, this will help us all to understand how pervasive the issue of slavery really is in our own lives.
And that it did not end on a given day.
In 1800s. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So, your next work is?
Well, we in the spring we do boys bow tie, and we try to put 80 boys in a room, learn how to tie a bow tie. Now it sounds like only 5% of men know how to tie a bow tie, and 6% of women, by the way. And this is not about that. It's about manners, about socializing. We normally have a black person who's on the right side of law enforcement show up and give a 5-minute talk and be part of it along with our 25 or 30 mentors. So that's our next big event. Girls' Tea Party a month later.
So you don't stop. Thank you, Ray Rickman, and for all that you do for Rhode Island and for our own consciences, for the fact that we've repressed so much and now we're learning it and it's out in the open. Thank you for your strength and your leadership. Ray Rickman, we celebrate you.
Thank you.